Brady Weaver from the Fairgrove FFA chapter. My family has always had some kind of a pet all of my life, whether that be a dog, horse, cat, chicken, turtle, or many others. Most of the time we have more than one pet at our house, and all of our pets are a big responsibility for everyone. The one breed of animal that has had a huge impact on my family is healer dogs. We've always had at least one healer at our house, and most of our healers are considered a son or daughter and a cattle dog. With these animals meaning so much to us, we take pride in how we care for them and in showing our love for them. When you care about someone or something, you want to make sure that it is well cared for, and it gives you a sense of responsibility for them or it. Responsibility is something that everyone needs to succeed in life. One great way to learn responsibility is to have a pet that you have to take care of and make sure is well cared for by feeding and watering it, spending time with it, and checking its health. Terry Kay, a pet specialist, said this in an article on PetMD.com. Kids who take care of dogs learn what it is like to have a living creature that relies on them, and that teaches responsibility in a way little else can. Having any kind of living animal as a pet that you or your kid have to take care of, because the animal relies on you, gives you a good understanding and good practice of responsibility. 2 years ago, we got a new healer that is a mix between a red and a blue. My dad had just lost someone named Ruby that had impacted his life in a huge way. It was only fitting that our new healer was red and that Ruby was the name we decided on for her. In just 2 years, she has become the favorite in the family, and she can't even talk. Ruby gets to go to work with my father and always gets fed the best out of anyone in our household. If you can't tell, Ruby is the pride and joy of our family and is always there when we need a laugh or someone to comfort us. Having Ruby in our family the last 2 years has changed all of us, and in a good way for that matter. Ruby has helped us get through a lot and has always been there for us. When my great-grandma passed away, it was hard on a lot of us, and having Ruby there to comfort us and to just be there helped all of us. Ruby has also helped us when my grandpa was sick and we were all really worried about him. Ruby helped us to just still have some fun and to just take a few minutes to laugh at her while she was playing. Ruby is not the only dog we have. We also have a dog named Chevy. Without both of these dogs, some of the hard things that we have been through would have been 10 times harder to go through. Without having our dogs there to comfort us. Dogs don't just help you, they change you. In an article on helpguide.org, authors Kay Lundgren, Lawrence Robinson, and Robert Siegel said, even hardened criminals in the prison have shown long-term changes in their behavior after interacting with pets. Many of them experiencing mutual affection for the first time. Even for someone that has no one believing in them because of their past, can get a pet and change tremendously. At our house, we don't just have dogs, we also have horses. And a few months ago, my dad was working with some of our unbroke horses. My dad was the only one home except for Ruby, and for the most part, Ruby was being good and listening to my dad when he said to stay out of the corral. My dad had finished working with the horses and decided to clip their hooves. And that is when Ruby got a little too excited and wanted to help my dad, but wasn't sure exactly how. With these horses not being broke, and with all the anxiety they were having, they were trying to make it harder on my dad so that hopefully he would give up. They were also super anxious, and every time that my dad would touch them, they would jump or get spooked. Ruby could tell that they were all getting super nervous, and so when she went up behind one trying to help my dad control the horse freaked out and kicked Ruby in the head. Ruby flew backwards into the middle of the corral and was knocked out. My dad immediately ran over to her and held on to her. Right at this moment, my mom, my sister, and I pulled into the driveway. We saw my dad and Ruby in the middle of the corral on the ground. We immediately rushed over to them with our hearts racing. When we got there, Ruby had just come to, and my dad was holding on to her, trying to find the root of the blood. My mom immediately picks her up and takes her into the house to try to clean up the blood and to help her. Once in the house, Ruby started to walk, but definitely not in her normal way. Ruby might not have helped my dad in that moment or protected him, but she did what she thought was protecting him and helping him. Even from a very young age, Ruby knew that her job was to protect everyone in our family. And that is what she thought she was doing that day by getting in the corral with my dad. Ruby could see the horses getting stressed, and Ruby was starting to get worried that the horse might hurt my dad, so she decided to get in the corral and help him. ScottsdalePetHotel.com had a very good article about a pet or dog's feeling of protectiveness for their owner or owners. And one thing that they said was, protectiveness comes from the dog's wolf ancestors and centuries of breeding, which means that they know instinctively when a human child is in need of care. Dogs are very protective, and if you treat them the right way, they try to repay you by making sure no harm is done to you. Ruby was only trying to make sure no harm came to my dad that day in the corral. Most dogs will bark when someone they are unfamiliar with comes near them or the house, and as a warning to both you and the other person. Dogs are very loving, kind, and protective of their owners. To finish the story about Ruby, my mom decided to call the vet to make sure there wasn't any brain bleeding or anything else going on. The vet told my mom that Ruby probably had a mild concussion and that we should keep an eye on her, and if she started acting super weird, we would need to bring her in. With those words from the vet, we all felt a little more at ease with Ruby not being hurt. As the night went on, Ruby started acting more and more like her normal self. And luckily, Ruby survived the battle of the horse and the dog. And you wouldn't even know that she had a run-in with the horse if you hadn't been told the story. Ruby has impacted my family and our everyday lives. Any kind of pet can have this effect on someone, just like Ruby had on our family. Having a pet can impact your life in ways that most people would never even imagine. Having a pet can teach you a countless number of lessons like responsibility and loyalty. Pets are like a best friend that is always there when you need them, and that will always help you through the good and the bad times.